let's get started. It is 1 o'clock. We thank you so much for joining us today on taking it virtual and really at that virtual office that COVID-19 is forcing us to do these days. So I am Meredith Copeland. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here with Financial Services Online. You're also going to see my coworker, Jim O'Quinn. He is CEO and President of Financial Services Online. So we are here to really kind of talk to you guys about how we've been virtual, how the virtual office works for us, and some of the challenges we've had to work through and come across, as well as give you guys some tools that really work well for us. So a little bit of background on us before we get started. We have over about 30 years of combined virtual experiences in virtual office. So if you have a challenge, most likely we've had to overcome that challenge as well. So how do you handle your dogs and your kids being at home? Right now it seems to be everybody nationwide is at home, even schools are out. And so we can talk through some of that. We do hope that today is a conversation, and we hope that we can get you guys in and out in about 15 to 20 minutes. If there's something we want to dive through a little deeper, let us know. Use the chat box for any questions. Use the chat box for situations you're dealing with. But let us know, and we can quickly schedule another webinar that we can sign up for and dive deeper into some of these tools. So as we get started and as you guys start letting us know what are the situations you're dealing with, maybe what questions do you have that we can help address today, we're going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about our situation and some of the things that we've had to overcome. So for me, I have got a family of 6, 3 of which are teenagers. I've got 1 rancher husband that is in and out of the house all the time, and then a 9-month-old. So you can tell the teens to kind of be quiet. You can't really do that with a 9-month-old. So that is an interesting dynamic that we're working through. All of us are now at home. All 3 kids are now doing distant learning in junior high and high school. And my husband is about the only one whose job continues being unchanged as much. Of course, some of the stores and feed stores that he's having to deal with some of the supply chain things, but that is about it for him. So we can talk through that. I've had 3 dogs that have been indoor dogs as well. Unfortunately, they have all passed away, but we've dealt with that too. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere where we have got very low bandwidth and limited internet. So that is a little bit of our situation here at my house. Jim is in a completely different situation and has completely different challenges. So I'll let him tell you his challenges that we've had to work through. And hopefully as those questions and situations come rolling into the chat box, we can start after that. So go on, Jim.
All right, thanks, Meredith. I was just reflecting back a moment as to when we first started working virtually, and it was during the .com crash of 2000 and 2001, when it felt like the world was ending and the markets were never going to come back. We closed our office as a cost-saving measure and sent everybody to work remotely. Yet here we are again, a couple of market crashes later, having the same conversation. So mine is exactly opposite of Meredith's. I live in a dense urban area in a condo high-rise with lots of noise and neighbors occasionally causing a ruckus, and my wife also works at home. We both work out of the same office, which fortunately we like each other, so it works out well, except for when we both get on the phone, and I don't know why, but everybody seems to have a tendency to still yell into the phone, even though I'm pretty positive modern cell phones have great mics and you don't really have to yell into them. But so we're walking around with our headphones on and yelling into the phone all the time. So we got co-working spaces, so we have one where we sort of rotate in and out of, so that was very helpful for us. But it took about a year of us being under the same roof before we determined that it might be most healthy for our relationship if we were to get a remote working location. So yeah, so that's sort of my work situation. There are a handful of people at this co-working place, a few pets, so maybe some barking in the background, but it's pretty quiet here. and it works out really well. No audio, Meredith. So one of the first challenges of working remotely is equipment. I think there's a hex that it says no matter how many hours you put into setting up all your equipment, something is bound to go wrong. Doesn't matter how much you test it, no matter how many times you've done it, there's always going to be something that's will cause a glitch. So generally, we like to set expectations up front in the early part of the conversation with clients and potential clients, which is, be prepared for a hiccup, set conditions on who will call who. So if I initiate the call, then I just tell the client or potential client, look, if there's an interruption, I will call you back. And that avoids a situation where both people are trying to call back in, get in contact with each other. So.
Okay, I'm back. So we'll kind of go through that first hiccup we just did. So because there's 21 of us on the line, what you just experienced is somebody had accidentally become a presenter. And as the presenter, my screen completely changed. You could probably see it all over my face, although I could not see y'all's faces, and I could not see mine even. So that is one of the things that just sometimes happens when you're doing a big group call like this. One of the great reasons why you want to enable your video if you can. And then, of course, always mute yourself as well. So as we work through some of these challenges and dive in, we do have our first piece of conversation that came in through the chat box. If you need to find the chat box, it is hovering, I guess it could be hovering along the bottom or along the top, depending on how you have your screen set up. But it looks like just a little almost message blurb that you used to see a ton of times in scrapbookings and pictures. So if you'll click on that, then you can type in your message and that'll go to all of us in the group. So the first one we have says that they have not personally initiated any online events, that they've participated in Zoom calls and GoToMeeting events, but they need some guidance in initiating those events. So let me first kind of talk about that. Zoom and GoToMeeting have free accounts that are available. You can have up to 3 people on those accounts, and you can do a meeting up to 40 minutes. Now, I'll warn you, if your meeting's not done in 40 minutes, it will cut you off, but you can do that. And so the easiest way to do that is to go to their website. So you can just Google Zoom meeting or GoToMeeting and then sign up for your own free login. And Jim, I'm going to see, because you don't have the presenter piece, can you share a blank GoToMeeting login screen on your screen here real quick? Let me see if I can make you presenter.
Zoom might be a better choice.
Yes, if I had my choice, guys, I would choose Zoom. Zoom is just far less clunky. So I would choose Zoom if you could. I know we use GoToMeeting. That is because it's always been there. And that's just what we've been using for the time being. But Jim, I think you're presenter now and you can get going. Can everybody see Jim's screen here?
It should say Microsoft Office, all the tools you need.
Yes, that's what I see.
Okay, great. So you want to go to meeting?
Yeah, GoToMeeting or Zoom, whichever one. They both operate pretty similarly.
All right, let me get signed in here.
Can you take them through signing in or signing up?
Sure. I think I'm already logged in, so I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Let's do Zoom then.
Yeah, let me do Zoom.
Let's try Zoom.
We found Zoom to be a little bit more user-friendly, so it's easier to download the app. It's easier to get started. It's not nearly as complicated or cluttered with the number of options. So I may already have an account, but we'll see. Let's see. Sign in.
So while you're
sign up.
while you're signing up for that, Jim, I am putting that link that Jim found that into the chat box. It's just zoom.us. And this is this and GoToMeetings are probably one of our favorite communication tools. So we use teleconference when we are doing our group meetings, and we use teleconference when we need to get face-to-face in front of a customer. So we service all of the US and some of Canada. So obviously traveling outside of West Texas up to Canada is not always beneficial or cost-effective, nor is it even allowed right now with COVID-19. So Zoom Meeting and GoToMeeting are some of our favorite tools that we like to use. The other thing that I like about this is when you have your video enabled, so if you're working with your team or you're working with somebody else and your video is enabled, there's a little bit of an accountability that is set up into the video. So for those multitaskers out there with your video on, that's probably why we don't like our video on, right? Because we like to be doing a whole lot of different things that are happening. But with your video on, it takes away any miscommunication due to emotion or tone or body language that you think you're feeling over the phone. But with the video, you get to see it. And so it really kind of brings the team atmosphere back full circle that you sometimes lose when you're just on a teleconference alone.
So
okay.
I'd read this morning where the teleconference companies were experiencing overload, and maybe that's what's happening here. Is when I try to register, it's the puzzle you have to solve, the CAPTCHA, is not even displaying on the screen. So there's no way for me to sign up at this moment. So.
Okay. So with the other question, the same person asked if we could share a PowerPoint presentation or PDF on the screen doing a Zoom meeting. And are the instructions clear on the actual site? Yes, yes, and maybe. So yes, you can share your presentation, and yes, you can share a PDF. So if you have joined me on any of our other webinar calls, you've been able to see me share my screen, and that is how you want to share a presentation. So Jim, I am going to take presenter status back, and I'm going to show you guys how we share that presentation. Okay, so the instructions, Scott, on Zoom or on GoToMeeting may or may not always be clear, but there's always great YouTube channels. You can call us, we'll walk you through it if we need to. We're here to help you guys because we know that this is completely foreign to a lot of you. So the first thing I'm gonna see, and when you see me share my screen, you see that I've got a ton of different tabs open at the top, a ton of different bookmarks open as well. And so what I suggest doing is clearing up some of that. So I am going to show you guys how to do that real quick while I show you the presentation. So if you have a bookmarks bar, which is where you see all these different things popping up underneath the address bar, there's a arrow along the bottom, and or you can just right click on that and you want to unclick show bookmarks bar, and all of a sudden that goes away. Far more clear piece, right? The other thing that I would suggest doing, I've got different tabs open to show you guys different tools that we use, but I would always recommend that you only have the tabs open that you need to have open for the presentation. So right now we have the VSA pulled up. We've got PowerPoint in here for that. So if you were wanting to share a PowerPoint with, let's say, a client that you're doing a Zoom or a GoToMeeting webinar or teleconference with, you would just go choose your presentation. You don't have to show them all the steps of choosing this, but I'm going to, for the sake of it's just there and not already set up for me. I would go ahead and choose all of those PDFs, choose all of those presentations that you want so that they're already downloaded and ready to go. Once it's downloaded, you can then just pull it up to view, and you can immediately put it into presentation mode on your computer, right? And so it will take you through the presentation. You guys can probably still see my face as I'm talking to you, depending on the view that you have chosen with GoToMeeting. As the presenter, I've chosen just my screen to be seen. So you can do that. The other thing that you have when you're sharing your screen, you have the option to pause the sharing. And what pausing that sharing does is it leaves it on the screen that you were on when you pause it and allows you to do other stuff on that screen. And so it could immediately allow you to jump in and out of different programs without anything showing on that. So you can do that and share those PDFs and presentations while on the GoToMeeting and Zoom call.
A quick comment about sort of cleaning up your desktop. You know, we've all seen the alerts come in on the screen and when somebody's in the middle of a presentation. And so what I end up doing is creating an extra user on my machine and logging into that user. It's got a completely clean setup. All the notifications are turned off, so it doesn't get constantly interrupted. The toolbar at the bottom is basically stock toolbar that comes with the operating system. It doesn't have a ton of programs on it. Literally no bookmarks on the system, and the desktop is clean. So that's another option in sort of cleaning up your desktop environment if you're going to share your screens. So I just thought I'd put that in.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see here on my desktop, I have it pretty clean, and I put together some type of graphic for you guys every time we do a webinar that brings it back to center and back to the topics that we're doing. And so this graphic I threw together this morning. And so anytime that you're wanting to throw some graphics together or anything, I'm going to show you one of the tools that we use, and it is called Canva. Canva.com is also another free service out there that allows you to put together graphics for your social media. It allows you to put together graphics for any pictures or anything like that. So that's how we do that. It is free for use. There are some pictures that you may have to buy, and then there's some free stock pictures as well. But you can see that you can pretty much make any social media post, any quote, anything like that. When you see a picture from us, it has likely come out of Canva. So that is another great tool that we use for if you need to clean up that desktop a little bit. All right, and make it a little bit more friendly.
Should we go ahead and jump into the tools that we use for our remote working and just cover those real quick?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of run through a very high level some of the things that we do and we put into place the moment we took our team virtual. So if I could get a quick idea of how many of y'all have a team that's virtual and how many of y'all it's just you that's virtual. If you could use the chat box, that would be great. So for a team and anything like that, you want to put some boundaries in place. So you also want to put some boundaries in place at home. So let's think about from home first. Think about your internet connection. Where is that router? Where are your families going to be? What does that space look like to you? So you can see that there's 3 of us right now sharing our video. You've got Jim that's got some pictures in the back. I've got a blank wall that you can tell that we're working on painting and getting some bookshelves down. And then we've got another one who's obviously and clearly in his office. Those are all great ideas. What you want to think about with your space is your connection to the internet. Is it going to be strong enough with bandwidth? You want to think about distractions behind you, right? So how distracting is it? And then you also want to think about the lighting. Any of the lighting could make it real bright to where your face is just dark. It could also make you look like a ghost and your face look like the light bulb. So think about the lighting as well. But whatever space works for you is great. I suggest finding a place where you can actually sit down. You're a little bit more productive. Family seems to leave you alone a little bit more with that. But that's how we've worked through that. And then boundaries, right? So go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say, experiment with your setup. So, test with the lighting, because in the morning, like I have an open window right in front of me right here. So I get midday sort of sun coming in and has a tint to it. But at night, if I was here, then I have a light just behind my head. So the wall would glow really bright and you wouldn't be able to really see my face. And see, Meredith, this is a good example of if you get too close to a really bright light source, it sort of washes you out. So just experiment with, your setup. Take your laptop and move it around in different places. Yeah, putting a light behind you is generally not a good idea, and then putting one really close so it washes out your face is generally not a good idea. So so you can find the right balance, and all cameras are different. So some cameras and laptops are like really good, and some are not so good. So some adjust to the environment really well, and some don't. So just sort of experiment. Get your friends and family to take a look at it and make sure they give you an honest opinion, and just don't pat you on the back and tell you look great. But just experiment with your environment a little bit. Also, echoes from your mic, those are difficult sometimes. Feedback loops, so if you got your speakerphone on, you may experience feedback loops. So again, I'll say this all the time, which is just experiment with your setup and get it like set up. And then even then you're going to run into problems. So it's just, but you'll be a little bit more familiar with your environment, and it's easier to debug those issues as they come up. So back to you, Meredith.
Yeah. So I particularly like to call in to any meeting that I'm doing, and I use my headphones that y'all can't even see probably. If I use my headphones, the mic seems to be a little bit clearer than the actual mic on my computer. You can see Jim has a completely different setup where he's got more of a professional mic and headphones going on. Whatever works for you, make it work. And then you want to set up those boundaries. So I've got 3 teens at home. They love to start getting really loud with each other. And so we had to kind of set in place what can and can't be done, more than just, discipline about siblings and sibling rivalry. We want to talk about how does that affect our office environment? Because essentially, it's just like being in our office with me, right? Or going to work with me. So you want to set up those boundaries. And then for those of you that have a team, so most of you on the call, it seems like it's just you, but for those that you have a team with, you want to set those office expectations as well. How many times are we going to communicate a day? How are we going to do those team communications? I recommend doing video conferencing if you can. It gives you a chance to play with it. It also gives you a chance to have some personal interaction outside of your home and stay connected, as well as the loss of communication doesn't happen as much when video is included. So I would put that in place as well. And then what are those boundaries for them? So for us, we have multiple different communication tools throughout to take you through. We kind of have a level of what communication tool are we going to use based on how quickly that you need to communicate with each other. And so what is kind of the green light, you can handle it yourself. What is a little bit more urgent and we need everybody to hop onto it. And then the 911s are flat phone calls for us. And so let's hop into some of those communication tools. We've talked about Zoom. We've talked about GoToMeeting. There's one more that we want to share. And Jim, if you can share it in the chat window, that web address for them. And this is a new one we found yesterday for you guys. It's called Jitsi with a J, J-I-T-S-I. It is all web-based. You do not have to have a login. You don't have to have a sign-in. And it was pretty self-explanatory once we got in there. It is web-based. It does allow you to call in as well, but it is a little clunky in the sense of you can choose your video piece. Once we added audio and video into the same device, it works a little clunky too, but we did test it with phone and computer, and I think the computer worked best, but phone did pretty well. So you were able to share your screen on that as well. You were able to pick through different programs on your computer that you wanted to share, so it didn't just bring up everything. It brought up all your active ones, and then you got to choose that. So that's another one that you can try that's free. Those are all going to be teleconferencing ones, right? There is another one that we are not going to mention, and that is WebEx. We're not a fan. It is way too clunky. There are so much better tools out there. And so Zoom, GoToMeeting, and Jitsi are far above WebEx. And yes, Scott, that's exactly how you spell it, J-I-T-S-I. The other thing that we want to talk about is Slack. Slack is an instant message program that you can have on your computer and you can have on your phone. And this was the biggest game changer for us. So go ahead, Jim, speak to that.
Can I make just a brief clarification? So we have sort of a communications hierarchy, because what we learned is that if people get in contact with you immediately, they will. So with a lot of these tools like Slack, there's immediate communication. So Meredith was alluding to this earlier, is that our sort of communication hierarchy is that email is at the bottom because it's generally one of the most messy communication channels that we have. You know, between the spams and the 10 or 7 replies that get included with signatures, it's just, and if you look at email, there's just a lot of options on email that you kind of even wonder why they're all there, especially if you use Slack for a while. So so email's at the bottom of our communications hierarchy. Slack is next, which we're going to cover. It's a chat program that we use for internal communications. It can also be used for external communications. There we go. And then text messages on our phone is the second level, and then the highest priority is a phone call. So if anyone picks up the phone and calls us internally, it's a 911 type situation. So then if somebody sends a text message, it's urgent, but it doesn't need immediate attention. Slack is just too easy, and it works so well that, you know, you can fire off things to people all day long. And some people will check it every couple hours. Some people will check it in the morning and at lunch and in the evening, and then some people will check it all day long. But it is a fantastic tool. I can't praise it enough in terms of communicating internally, but it can also be used to communicate externally. You can set up a channel, a Slack channel, which is like an email address, and you can hand it out, put it on your business card and hand it out to your customers and say, if you need to contact me, you know, hit me up on my Slack channel, and then a little notification will come across the screen when somebody sends you a message, and you can respond right there. But the communication is so much cleaner in comparison to email. You know, trying to parse an email thread sometimes is just mind-bending, but as you can see with Slack, the previous communications is right above, and they're short and sweet. They can be long, but typically it's condensed in comparison to email. You can upload files over Slack, so you can share PDF, Word documents, and then in some cases we have system notifications that come in from our servers. Like if there's an issue, it'll notify our Slack, so we get you know, notifications through there. And then there's a lot of add-ons for it, bots and things that can do things for you. So if you need reminders or tasks executed at a certain time every day, Slack can do it. So it's really, its growth has been tremendous. I mean, these guys did such a great job. It's literally, yeah, they IPO'd, I think, this year and are like going off the charts. So it's a really good program. We highly recommend it.
So here's a couple of things that came in through the chat box. So one is their RIA does not allow anything but email and phone. And so Scott, if you can clarify, does that mean within your team as well, or just with your clients? Because I can completely understand clients may or may not like the Slack piece. It was a game changer within our team. So just to clarify that was one of the biggest things for within our team. If you don't have a team, Slack may be a little bit different for you to use, and maybe not be the best piece for you. For those of you that are using Microsoft Teams, Cisco Jabber, if you've got a phone, they're very similar. What I like about Slack is it's really kind of its own login, right? So you can set up a workspace, you can set up a friend space, you can set up whatever you want to, and then there is an app. If you are one of those that can't turn it off, you can have it on your desktop, and then it really goes everywhere with you. It's a little bit faster communication than text messaging. It's a little bit less clunky than Microsoft Teams or Cisco Jabber. So that's why we like Slack, and that's why it's been a game changer for us. One of the other questions that have come in, and we're kind of hopping around, but I don't want to leave your questions out, was how about running a recorded webinar? And so if you'll clarify for me, Sam, if you're running a recorded webinar, it's the same as having a video chat. There's a record button. So all the webinars that I've done every Wednesday or every other Wednesday up to this year, I've recorded all of them. And it automatically downloads it. You can upload it to a YouTube channel to get a link. And then if you are a user of the VSA and you have your own website within the VSA, you can add that link onto your important links within your website. The running a recorded webinar and doing a teleconference is really about the same. It's just hitting that record button. Okay, so let's hop back on to the rest of our communication tools that we have. What about sharing documents? I don't know how many documents that you guys have to share. If you don't have a team, maybe that's why you don't have to, but we like Google Drive for that reason. And the reason we like Google Drive is, again, it goes everywhere with you. It's on your phone, it's on computer, it's on your laptop. It could be on your spouse's laptop if you need to log into that. So all that is Google Drive. They've got docs and spreadsheets on there. Great for if you have a team because it automatically updates every time. And then if it's just you, then anything that you've got uploaded into that Google Docs, you can share a link. So it's not necessarily an attachment. You can share a shared link, and anybody can click on that and access that through that Google Docs link. So that's another great tool that we like to use from communication and making sure you've got things everywhere you go. And then really the last one was Canva. Was kind of that was the other, game changer for us from a marketing and making us look a lot more professional with our graphics and social media posts there. So what other questions do you guys have? What challenges are you having to work through? If you're working alone, then maybe you've got a little bit more experience working remotely than if you have a team. So we want to help answer any of those questions. And we know that we've really gone over our typical 15 to 20 minutes where it's about 1:32, but we're going to hang out and help you guys with any questions that you guys may have. So y'all tell us where you'd like to take the conversation. Or if you'd like to
dive
take
into any one of these tools. Yeah, so I was going to say, if you want to deep dive into one of these tools, we could carve out a few minutes right now, or we could set up a one-on-one and work with you individually. So just kind of let us know. We're here to answer questions.
That does remind me of another tool, Jim, that we use. So while you guys are throwing in some questions and some other tools that you guys use, let me take you to another tool that I use as well, and this is Calendly. So I do pay for an upgraded version of Calendly. It's pretty minimal. I mean, we're talking less than $10 a month, but it allows me to have different types of meetings set up. And I add this to my email. I share the link with my clients and with others, and they can automatically see my calendar when they want to schedule something. So if you're wanting to schedule a 15-minute video or a 15-minute phone call, then it pulls up availabilities for my 15-minute slot, and it'll show you those times available there along with the date. So this is a great way that I like to manage my calendar. It helps with the back and forth of having to schedule those calls as well. So this is another great one. These are things that, guys, I have had clients and testimonials of people that have had clients that it really doesn't matter the age range. All of your clients can use this. It more matters their technical ability. So my 80-something-year-old grandmother just did a family Zoom call with us the other day, and then I had a friend of mine who's a financial advisor out of San Antonio that did a Zoom one-on-one call with them over state lines with a 75-year-old woman. So it really kind of depends on those clients, and I would ask them how they want to communicate with you. Some of the other questions and comments that we've had come in. So we've got somebody who uses ZipWhip for texting. So that's a tool we don't know anything about, John. So we'd love to hear more about how you're using that and what that means. It sounds like you can do 600 characters max on that. So that is great for those who want to check that out. Another question came in is there an alternative in Microsoft to Google Docs? Yes, there is. So that is OneDrive. Microsoft OneDrive, if you have Office 365, OneDrive works kind of the same way. You can save it all into that, and as long as you're signed in to Office 365, you can get that as well. Google Docs is a little quirky, and so it does take some time to kind of work through that, but OneDrive with Microsoft depending on the windows that you've got, would work.
So let me clarify that question, Scott. Are you looking for a replacement for the entire suite, which would be spreadsheets and Word and email, or just the Drive? Okay, so Google Docs is a suite of tools, and it's free of cost. The pay-for version is called G Suite. It has a spreadsheet, which is an Excel clone. It has a Microsoft Word clone. It has a PowerPoint clone, and it has a Drive that you can share with. Microsoft also has the equivalent of online versions of those tools. It's not a tool you download and install on your computer like the regular Office suite. It's all hosted in the cloud. It's all online. So Microsoft's, I think, is called Office 365. The nomenclature on their Office suites are changing and a little confusing at sometimes. But it works all online, so you can get to it from almost any device, and they have apps that you can put on your phone and get to your documents as well. So if you use the version that's installed on your computer, it's a little hard to access those if your computer is turned off or it's somewhere else. But if you host them in the cloud, you can get to them from your phone, tablet, or any other desktop. But I think it's Office 365 is their online version, and then Google's, they just call it Google Docs or G Suite, which is their pay-for version. And those both include a virtual drive like Dropbox. So you got Dropbox, OneDrive is Microsoft's version, and then Google Drive is Google's version. But those three tools, which are a subset of the bigger suite of tools, are available from both of those vendors, and Dropbox is probably the most popular one that's out there. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so I just showed you guys my Google Drive, throwing it out there, probably putting myself a little bit on notice of what's in there, but this is the Drive piece and would work just like Dropbox. But Google Docs is kind of the Google version of Microsoft Word. And so if you needed to do something new, then you can just pull up a Word document and it's all in Google Docs. So it automatically saves there and will automatically save to your Drive as well.
And
so that's what makes it a little bit different than Dropbox.
And they have a collaboration feature. So if you we're collecting information from a coworker, then you could hit the share button over there. And if Meredith was to share that with me, we could both edit the document at the same time. So, and it works brilliantly. Surprisingly, they've somehow figured out how to prevent, stepping on each other's changes. So I could pop into this session and you would see my name show up, and anything I type would have a green box around it to identify me. Anything Meredith types may have a blue box around it. And so that's how you identify the two users that are collaborating on a document. It's really well done. So yeah, I might see if I can pop up.
One of the other questions we have is, Dropbox and Office 365 and maybe not taking full advantage of those tools that you've had up to this point. Now would be the time to start diving into them, because I think you're going to find that you're going to love them whether you have to be in an office space or whether you are quarantined at home for the next 14 days. So Dropbox is great. So Dropbox, there's a lot of different stores and print shops that you can go into and immediately sign in to Dropbox and be able to print those documents straight from there. It's also another way to kind of back up some documents outside of your computer. It puts it in a cloud drive. And it's not just a document or an Excel spreadsheet, right? Dropbox will do any file. So pictures, anything like that. And you can share out of Dropbox as well. So that's great too. I think you'll find that all of these tools at some point, you may find some that work better for you than others, but I think you're going to love them. All right. So
I was trying to get logged in real quick to do the collaboration on the document, but between I have my phone on airplane mode, and that's the other thing that before you hop on these conversations with your clients or potential clients or coworkers, it's a good idea to just be distraction free. So not typing on your keyboard, looking at your phone every 30 seconds. But I was trying to get the code so I could log in and see if we could collaborate with on this document real quick, but it may take a few seconds. So
you guys tell us, we're kind of running up against our time here. We've been on here for 40 minutes and we've got some great conversation that's coming through and diving in pretty deep with some of them. You tell us, what do you want to see? Do you want to see more like this? Do you want to see a particular tool for us to dive into? We can set something else up pretty quickly and send it back out to you guys so we can register and get another one going, maybe even as soon as Thursday. So tell us if this was helpful. Tell us if this makes ease some of those fears or anxieties about keeping your business going while being remote, and how you can really keep the doors open even though we got to lock the doors at the time right now. So one other question that keeps coming in is, does the recipient need to have a Dropbox in order to share a document from Dropbox? I believe so. It's been a while since I've used Dropbox, but Jim, can you speak to that? Have you used Dropbox lately if they have to have a Dropbox account?
So the person that is sharing the document has to have a Dropbox account. The person receiving it does not, to the best of my knowledge. It's been that way unless it's changed recently. And I believe that's the way all the drives work, the G Drive, the OneDrive, and the Dropbox. The individual receiving the document does not need an account. The person sending it does. Unless you set the credentials on that link that says you got to log in to access it. You can only read it, you can't write it. So there are some advanced access credentials that could be added to that document. But if you just want to share, like if I wanted to share a document to you and don't put any additional credentials on that document, then you could pick it up and save it onto your computer without having an account.
Okay, so we have another question coming in. When you create a meeting or webinar, how do you set up to send invites, RSVPs, and reminders? So that is more integrated, and it's a really deep dive, they're saying, but let me see if I can quickly high level explain it to you with the tools that we have. So when you use Calendly, you can set up reminders if you have the pro account. So reminders would automatically go out, and you can set up email reminders and text reminders. It would take us some time to really dive deep into that, but we can do that with you. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do that. The way we do our webinars here, you've got to go and you register, then we send you automatic pieces out and automatic reminders out. That is a little bit more in depth. I don't know if you would call that coding, Jim. Jim's the expert behind that. So I tell Jim what I want to do, and Jim then makes it happen. So Jim, can you speak to how we do that?
Sure, and I think this comes down to dollars. So I believe GoToMeetMe, if you pay enough, they have a email reminder system built in. Is that correct, Meredith? Like I think some of the, once you move up into the upper tier pay for accounts, it comes with a whole a bunch of additional features. And I think one of those is, go ahead.
There is a difference between GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. So we do our webinars through GoToMeeting, and that came down to cost effectiveness for us. When you pay for the webinar, it will be somewhat baked in if you pay for it. We found some workarounds on how we wanted to make GoToMeeting work for us. So we have to send out the invitation to you. That's a little bit easier because then when you create the meeting, and let me see if I can share my screen real quick with you guys. When you create the meeting in GoToMeeting Hub, you would create a meeting here. You'd put in your title and set up all the time and everything. So we'll set it up for today at 3 for 30 minutes. When you hit save, it's going to automatically bring you to this, and you've got the copy invitation. So when you copy the invitation, it's already copied. I'm going to use Slack as our example. Then you literally just go copy and paste it in and send it out. So it works the same way with email as well.
But it does not automatically, it has no facilities by which you can send that out directly from the webinar setup. Is that correct?
From the meeting setup, no, there's no direct. On the webinar side, there may be some direct invitation piece that you can do. We don't pay for the webinar piece, so I haven't really worked through all of that. But there is some, the webinar piece, they like to really, they're very proud of their webinar piece on both Zoom and GoToMeeting. And so if you can make the meeting side of the teleconference work for you, then you want to do that.
So that's an important distinction, I think, to make on these is there's the free account, there's the meetings account or level of subscription, and then there's the webinar level of subscriptions. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
And so the pricing goes from free to like really expensive. So if you want to do the webinar piece and get all the additional features that come with that, like being able to send out reminders, customize those reminders as they go out, the price jumps significantly. So we have the meeting piece, and then we use a separate set of tools that we already have that we use for other communications to automate the reminder system. So we use a marketing automation system called Modic. It's like building a skyscraper out of little BBs. It's like one of the most arcane, difficult tools I think in existence, but it's just a blank slate. So if you can figure out how to use it, you can build anything with it. So we use it sends out the initial confirmation email, it sends out the reminders, and it's all scheduled. So as soon as someone signs up, a whole slew of actions automatically happen, and it just sort of handles everything for us. But to get something that's easy to use, that is built into these video conferencing systems, it's typically in the high range price category to get those tools. So.
Okay. So one of the other things that we have got is that really some of the biggest problems you guys may be seeing is the time to dive into these tools and these programs that you need to use, especially when you're trying to keep your day-to-day going. It's new, so you run out of patience, or you have to wait for it to load, or you've got to go add it. If there's something in a tool you want us to dive into, I know that we are the VSA and we are Financial Services Online, but if we can help you with that, then we'd be happy to. So let us know if you want another kind of conversational setting like this, if it would be beneficial to you, if maybe later on this week after you've figured out new challenges of what's happening with your home office, or maybe it's just your family and you just need some personal interaction outside of those ones that we love and live with 24/7.
Are you proposing a virtual happy hour, Meredith? Is that what you're proposing? A virtual
Hey, I have done that. So GoToMeeting and Zoom is great for virtual happy hours for your friends. Poker night, even the kids and I, they were somewhere else the other day and we played Phase 10 over Zoom. So get creative with it, make it work for you. But really, your business does not have to come to a halt because COVID-19 decided it wanted to spread through the U.S. So that is kind of our biggest piece.
All right.
We'll hang on. We're right at 50 minutes. I hate to keep you guys any longer. So any questions have come in, we'll hang on. If you think that having another open conversation would be beneficial, let us know and we can get that scheduled. But use the chat box to do that. And we thank each and every one of you for taking the time today, a lot of your time today, to really spend it with us and let us help you. So we're here for help. If you need anything, just let us know.
So a little funny story. Meredith and I were laughing yesterday. It was there was all the work from home stories were showing up on Twitter, and there's a lady dressed properly at home on her computer with the company having a corporate webinar, and her husband walks by in the background in his t-shirt and in his underwear. And the look on her face was pretty morbid. So dress appropriately. Sometimes it's helpful to, if you're working at home a lot, to get up first thing in the morning and act like you're going to work. Get up, take a shower, get dressed, have breakfast, walk around the block, come back in and sit down. It's surprisingly how that adjusts the mindset. But make sure nobody wanders across the background in their nightgown or anything. So you might end up on Twitter.
Well, awesome. Well, yes, definitely pay attention. Remember, you're on video when you take your computer and everything. I think we've seen some pretty horror stories. There was that one that Jim just shared. There was another one where a girl decided to take them to the bathroom with them. So be mindful of what you're doing while you're on video, and don't forget that. We are getting some great feedback that maybe another session like this would work. And so watch your emails for this. We were hoping to record this and send it out at 15 minutes long. It's going to be a pretty long recording, but we will definitely maybe set up another session. Y'all let us know if this week works, or if you would like to do early next week after you've had time to find your bearings and everything else. So we appreciate you joining us today. We'll hang out for a little bit, but this does complete our call. So thank you so much, and you guys have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, wash your hands.
Yeah. Learn the mute button and learn the audio button, the mute audio button, and learn the mute video button. That's like very important. So Scott, let's see. Any additional, give us a topic or an idea of what you would like to see. Yeah, we could probably cover it. Cool.
Fantastic. Well, we'll hang out a little bit. Feel free to type in anything. We love your feedback. Give us some direction. But those of you that I know have been hanging out for the full 51 minutes, you guys are free to go unless you just want to hang out with us for a little bit. And then I'll cut it off at about 1:55. So you guys have a great time. We'll get some emails out for a new session that we put together. Give us some direction on where you guys would like us to go. And we will see you guys soon. Talk to you then.
Cool. Bye. If y'all are going to hang out for a little bit, then I can talk a little bit about the hardware that I use for my setup. I used the speakerphone in the beginning, but there was a terrible echo, and I could not solve the echo. And so it was suggested from a friend of mine who does podcasts to buy a mic. So that's what's kind of this little contraption that hangs, it kind of screws to the side of the desk. It's easily to assemble and disassemble. I think it was like $22. I was like, this can't be good. But it surprisingly works very well. So it's USB, plugs into my laptop. This is a Mac laptop. The webinar software finds it automatically. Asks me if I want to use that device. I say yes, and it magically shows up. So also purchased a Logitech high definition camera that I just perch on the top of my laptop. So that's what I use for the video. I used the FaceTime, the camera in the laptop, but that area on my laptop screen has a little scratch in it, and it's always kind of dirty and dusty, and it never really gives a good picture. It's like there'll be this corner of the screen would kind of be distorted looking. So picked up a relatively inexpensive Logitech camera. It also plugs into the USB and magically worked. The webinar software saw it, asked me if I wanted to use it, said yes, and it just showed up. So yes, that's just a little bit on the hardware setup. It's not fancy at all. So and it all just worked. So can't complain with that. Alrighty. So appreciate everybody from showing up. And if you got some ideas for us, send them on. We'll be happy to cover them. Have a good evening. Bye.